When Anna McNulty asked me to share what incorporating the ELA framework did for my classroom, I knew I would not be able to convey it through sentences that I wrote, so I chose to make a video. I'm a 2009 core member, and McNulty introduced the ELA framework to me and a group of people in my second year, maybe in my first year, yeah. And I really was able to implement it in my second year. So I taught the same novels to my students the first year as I did in the second year, and the places that my students ended up in the places I was able to take them to in the second year because of the ELA framework was much deeper and much more meaningful for my students. Just in general, the ELA framework leads to much more authentic learning and engaging in a text, and if you're someone who is having trouble wrapping your head around like all this objective driven like teach to the test type of feeling, the ELA framework really puts a better framework on that. So I'd say that, like, for example, I taught a novel called The Skin I'm In, and in my first year my students were able to, identify point of view, easily tell me that it was in first person point of view, that Malika was the first person narrator, and I could say how would this be different if it was from Charlize's point of view or from the teacher's point of view, and they could do that, and I was happy with that in my first year. And then my second year with the framework, I was able to focus more on the message the author was trying to convey, and really push up the analysis. I'd say in my first year, even though I might have thought my students were analyzing, I think in my second year they really did actual literary analysis as sixth graders. So my second year when teaching that same novel, they were able to tell me, like, why did that point of view help Sharon G. Flake convey her message about accepting your insecurities, and just like taking it to the next level of what does point of view do for the message, and that the author understanding that the author has a choice and made this choice, and why did the author make the choice. And my students loved the discussion and talked on and on for weeks about point of view and lots of literary devices in those terms, like why did the author make that choice and how does it contribute to the message he or she is trying to convey. And I would say I realized what the ELA framework did the most when I came to Denver interviewing for jobs, and I went to one of the top charter schools here called DSST, and I was looking at the student work on the board, and the student work was supposedly literary analysis papers, and I was reading them, and it was just so surface level. Like, it was them talking about a book, pretty much telling the plot and the main characters, maybe giving an example of figurative language and the conflict, and maybe mention mood and what the mood identified the mood. And then when I compare it to my students' literary analysis essays, we were not in the top charter school in St. Louis. We were in a public school. There was a huge jump in the thinking that my students were doing. And yeah, my students' writing wasn't at the same place as the DSST writing that I saw, but the ideas there were pushing high school level, high school level, versus what I saw in this classroom seemed very elementary, and that was good teaching. So I think the ELA framework really takes it to the next level for all teachers, and really took it to the next level for my students and for me as a teacher. And I'm now at a charter school in Denver, and they do a lot of things right, but their curriculum is very, very standard driven, which, yes, that's the climate we're in now, and I don't push back on that as a concept or a reality or a necessity, so I haven't really been pushing back on this charter school for anything, because for the most part I don't feel like I have to, because they're doing so many things right, but in this case I've talked to the 7th grade reading heads in our network, and because I'm so passionate about the framework, we're going to be able to implement it in one of the units. So it's not all the units, which would be ideal, but I think it's a starting place, and I think that I felt passionately enough about the success of the framework and what it does for student learning that I have gone and challenged this system that really has worked for students. And so I'm fearful of challenging it, but that's how much faith I have in the ELA framework, that it's worth challenging the system that they have now. So it is a ton of planning. It's a lot of high-level thinking for you as a teacher, because if you're going to get your kids to do high-level thinking, you have to do more high-level thinking. But it's really, really cool in the end, and it really pays off. And I encourage you, no matter what grade level you're teaching, to embrace it. If it's not in your first unit, then later on. But McNulty will have your back, so you're good to go.